As I said previously, recently, and prior, of course it's a good idea for the United Nations to fucking get involved. 1957 to 1967. 10 years of peace. 10 years. At least in the region controlled by the United Nations. A humanitarian corridor for non-combatants to get the fuck out of the Gaza Strip. Good idea. You know where the government offices and government buildings are? If you're a Palestinian, you know your neighborhood at least that well. You also know what's going to be targeted. You also know that not all those munitions are necessarily going to kill only the people that the Israelis want them to kill. If you and your children are celebrating firing of Hamas rockets when Israelis decide that they're going to go bomb the sites that fired those Hamas rockets, you're the idiot, not the Israelis. So, of course, United Nations, it's a good idea to have a humanitarian corridor. However, fuck you, United Nations. Do not tell the Jews, the Israelis, or the Hebrew. Do not tell them that they have to continue feeding, watering, and providing electricity to their enemies. Do not. Israel is not required by international law to provide its enemies with a goddamn thing. The legitimate Palestinian government, with the support of the Palestinian people, did knowingly and willingly and intelligently, well, that last part is debatable, is it not? They threw themselves over the border, recorded it, bragged about it, beheaded women and children in their houses, in their front lawns. They killed people and then raped their friends next to their bodies. The United Nations wants to tell Israel that refusing to give their enemies food, water, and electricity is immoral. It's against the law. It's against international law. Like the fuck it is. It would be one thing if the Israelis were bombing. Wait, you can't really bomb your own stuff, can you? It's not going to do you any good. The Israelis didn't have to bomb their own electrical plant. They just cut off the electricity. No more free shit. It's their labor that created that food. They are not required by any sort of law to give their food to others. Meanwhile, it is this free aid provided by Israel that Hamas ended by targeting women and children inside of Israel. Israel was never under any obligation whatsoever to provide food, water, or electricity to the Palestinian people. Ever. It is right to target infrastructure. It is right to target military objectives. And that's what Israel has done. Prioritize military objectives. Destroy their tanks, destroy their industry, destroy their infrastructure. Palestine would not have been so brazen with its attacks, except that they knew that they had backup and support, and indeed they do. I wonder if Jordan is still firing rockets over the border. Biden says the United States will not put boots in the ground, apparently. Maybe not, but the United Nations will. The United Nations wants to appease the wrong people. Israelis have the right to live. They have the right to farm. They have the right to their own industry. And they have the right to the fruits of their labors. They have given in abundance the fruits of their labors to the Palestinian people. The Israeli people have given more back to the Muslim world than anyone ever. They have given more land back to the Muslims than all of the land given up by Christians in every crusade. Combined. The Sinai Peninsula, they gave it back twice. The UN telling Israel that what they're doing is illegal. No, it's not. What do you do if someone takes a family hostage here in America? Cut off the power, cut off the water. That's what the police do. Food goes bad pretty quick. They gotta eat what's in the cupboards. Can't flush the toilet, place gets to stink. Can't get fresh water, you're gonna dehydrate, you're gonna wish you had some water. It's not just the hostage taker that is punished in that situation, it's also the hostages. It's not pleasant for them, but it brings the siege under wraps a lot quicker. If a man is in his own house, barricaded with his own family, and he's shooting at police, if those police shoot back, they might hit one of them kids or his wife. And they know that. They still do it. There's always a high chance in a situation like that with civilians getting shot, even when you're a trained professional who is trained to only shoot at something with a gun. Well, you know what? It might be real fucking quick. Civilians are often killed by police and commandos, not just in the United States, but worldwide. What the UN is saying about Israel is basically that while they've got the equivalent of a drug cartel besieging their house, these are thugs who take advantage of poverty in their region and use propaganda and religion in such horrible ways. It's like the United States and many of our Christians here. They do horrible things, always in the name of Jesus, right? In the name of Allah. We got to see men killing Israeli women while screaming Allahu Akbar. God is great. Oh, we got another troll on my channel. Gotta love them, right? What do? We take a screenshot. This feller calls himself B Staff. And I go to hide user on this channel, and this person goes away. It's hard to do that in real life. Palestinians are now seeing the consequences of the things that they supported. The government they chose was a terrorist organization that will never see Jews as humans. There does need to be United Nations intervention, and there should have been. The United Nations never should have pulled out at the request of Al Nasser in 1967. That never should have fucking happened. Within 10 days of that, Al Nasser was out trying to sink any and all Israeli shipping, trying to strangle the Israeli people by fighting a commerce war, same as the Russians in Crimea are doing. They want to control the sea lanes so they can control what goes in and out of Ukraine. Russia is not yet consolidated around the perimeter of Ukraine. And they're going to need to do that before they can prevent or blockade anything from going in or out of Kiev. These Russians are being dumb as a fucking stump is what they're doing. They thought they were going to go straight for Kiev, go straight for the head of the beast. But they stalled out over a fucking airport. This is strategic stupidity. They halted their entire attack because they wanted to redirect some of the forward echelon and block up the works. That allowed the citizens of Kiev to set up a whole hell of a lot of roadblocks and ample time to pull their RPG-7s out of storage. Every Russian tank who went into Kiev knew he was a dead man. Yes, you can penetrate it from the top. Every Russian and American main battle tank can be penetrated through the top with an RPG-7. Every one of them. I'm going to tell you a secret about a tank hatch. A human being has to be able to open it up. At the ranges, these RPG-7s are firing at these tanks, they can't help but hit. The other thing is they're making sure to use old Russian ammunition as much as possible. And why is it they want to use the old Russian ammunition instead of the newer stuff? Close range. That old Russian ammunition might blow up if you just drop it on its tip. So if you don't have time to screw everything together before that tank turret comes around and is pointed right into your building, you can throw the thing out the window like a fucking grenade. Just try to hit a hatch. Now we get to see how Hamas is wanting to brag that they took some techniques that are being used in Ukrainians as well as the Russians. Meanwhile, that very same technique I spoke about on my channel. I spoke about how lucky we are. That's right. How lucky we are that terrorists don't listen to my channel. Don't look at my Facebook. The things that the Ukrainians have done, these are all over my Facebook. Also, the paragliders, also on my Facebook. The bench lathe that I was moving, it was a gun lathe. Used in World War I and in World War II to make the British Enfield. It was a gun lathe. And I was converting it over to do what? To make World War I airplane engines in miniature. The Gnome monosopop engine from Les Cherney of Great Britain. 1/5 scale. What was I going to use them for? Paragliders. You know, a lot of the stuff that's being used modern day, this is stuff that any idiot should have seen coming. The technology is here. I always try to use the analogy of a Batman suit. Why is that? the gadgets, the utility belt. In the original Batman television series, it was spandex. So when I say a Batman suit, I'm not talking about the suit itself. I'm talking about the utility belt or the gadgets. If the gadgets are integrated into the suits as they are in some of the modern movies, what's in there? What's it based on? It used to be back in the 1960s that science fiction was based on fiction. Now there's a lot of stuff that was science fiction back then that we actually have today. Do we have monofilament line that's capable of carrying Batman and Robin? Yes. Do we have small, lightweight launchers and grappling hooks capable of going through bricks and grasping in them through the other side? Yes, we do. Nearly everything on Batman's special tool belt in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, nearly all of it is technology that we already have. When I make the analogy of a Batman suit, I'm not saying a literal Batman suit. But we've got Google glasses. We've also got stuff that can go to the Google glasses. Now, I get this is old technology now. But you have the ability to have heat sensors on those glasses to see infrared on them. You could interact with your environment with them. You could see around corners with them, literally. You could see what's just down the street from you, literally. And in some places, you could see it in real time. Some of that technology you have access to on Google. You get on Google Maps, and you can see the street view. Isn't that right? Yeah. I spoke up about drones, but I also stated very loud and clear that it was a good thing that terrorists didn't watch my channel. Then the Ukrainians and the Russians started doing and utilizing a lot of things that I had the ideas for. It's a good thing that I didn't give that engine design to Andrei Gagasian of New Jersey. He wanted to use my engine design to kill people in Azerbaijan. I wasn't down with that. Still not down with that. I know more than I should for somebody who's supposedly a mentally ill retard living homeless in a car. It's not intuition. It's not that I can read people's minds or any such craziness like that. It's that I paid attention in history and still do. I pay attention to who does what and why. What do Ukraine and Spain both have in common? Well, just prior to World War II, which rightfully should be known as World War III, the first actual world war was the American Revolutionary War. Look it up. America was at war with England, and they dragged France into it. Thanks, Uncle Benjamin Franklin, right? It wasn't difficult to tell what the Israelis were going to do. And it wasn't difficult to tell why. I pay attention to technology. I also pay attention to public opinion because I understand, just like every government understands, It doesn't make a goddamn bit of difference what's on the piece of paper. When the people have decided something, they've decided something, and you better go along or you get lynched. Here in the United States, we're less likely to lynch somebody because the courts don't mind railroading someone here in the interest of keeping the peace. If the United States wants to make an example of innocent people for speaking up, well, goddamn it, they're gonna. Nobody gonna be able to stop them. The United States doesn't often keep its word, but when it does, it gave its word that it's gonna kill folks. Like Saddam Hussein. I feel bad for the Palestinians the way that any homeless feels bad for other homeless people. It sucks, but we got our own problems. There will be American boots on the ground in the form of the United Nations. I spoke about how that's a good idea, and you get to see, now they're talking about implementing such a thing. A humanitarian corridor. Well, fucking duh. Let's get everybody out of the Gaza Strip who is not a Hamas combatant. And that way, Israel can do what it needs to do. Level Hamas. The Palestinians specifically targeted civilians and then went and hid behind civilians. Matter of fact, they hid behind their civilians first by firing from civilian neighborhoods. The Israelis aren't doing anything that the United States and Russia haven't done in the last decade. The United States has fought their wars exactly the same as Israel is. Same thing with Russia. Did or did not Russia target power plants? Did the United States or did the United States not target power plants? Israel doesn't have to target power plants because the Palestinians don't have any. They could have utilized the power that they have and the few natural resources that they have. They could have utilized that to create actual infrastructure and reduced or even eradicated the need for any aid from Israel. But they used the majority of the aid that they got from Israel for nefarious purposes to show Israel that Israel never should have helped them to begin with. Here's food, here's water, here's electricity, here's building supplies and bulldozers. Hey, we talked to our friends in the United States. They're willing to give you stuff. They're willing to help you have a military and an Air Force, willing to help train you. They're willing to give you equipment. Do any of you stop to look at how much the Israeli government has gone out on a limb to protect the Palestinian people from this exact scenario? Do you stop to take a look at how much, how often, and how frequently Hamas and two other terrorist governments in Palestine, each one targeting Israel over and over, by occupation, they're stating the fact that because Israelis exist in Israel, that's what the Palestinians are considering an occupation. Now, they're probably going to have to face an occupation. Israeli troops in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, armed. That way they can have an immediate response with boots already on the ground in those locations. How long does it take for Hamas to set up a rocket and launch it? How big are they, and what does it require in order to transport one? Those rockets are pretty big. Hamas rocket pictures. We'll go to images. Boogers. All right, here's one. How is it that they're able to tell that rockets are being fired? Well, you've seen an Estes rocket. Model rockets that your kids are allowed to fuck with. Now let's take a look at some Hamas rockets compared to a human being. Qassam 1, 60 millimeter, range 4 kilometers. See where they're manufactured? Gaza, 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 Iran, China. China and Syria. Four kilometers, 10 kilometers, 12 kilometers, 20 kilometers, 45 kilometers, 75 kilometers, 150 kilometers. Yeah. These things aren't exactly little compared to the 22 feet that it ends up being. Oh, hell, I did that wrong. Hamas rockets.
According to Wikipedia, the Qassam rocket is a simple, steel artillery rocket developed and deployed by the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades, the military arm of Hamas.
Yep. Not sure if you noticed, these guys who are taking Israeli food because they don't have any money for food have plenty of money for rockets. These things right here, what happens if one of these rockets doesn't fire right, which happens often? Well, it hits Palestinians and kills Palestinians. Hamas rocket launcher. Let's take a look at this one. All right, you see that? These things got quite a range. Now let's go to RPG-7 rocket launcher.
According to Military Today, perhaps the primary reason RPG-7s are so popular is the low cost, anywhere from $500 minus $2,000 for a launcher and $100 to $500 per rocket. RPG-7, initial model designation.
All right. RPG-7 range.
According to National Museum of the USAF, with a skilled operator, the RPG-7 has a maximum effective range of about 1,000 feet for a moving target and 1,600 feet for a stationary one.
It's most effective at the 300 meters point. The Soviet tactical doctrine regarding the RPG-7 states that it is the most effective at 300 meters or at a point-blank target with a height of 2 or more meters. When was the RPG-7 introduced?
1961. According to Wikipedia, the RPG-7 was first delivered to the Soviet Army in 1961 and deployed at the squad level. It replaced the RPG-2, having clearly outperformed the intermediate RPG-4 design during testing.
All right, now, 1961, RPG-7. What happened in the 1960s with Israel? Well, they established a border that was twice the width of what an RPG-7 could fire. Although its effective range is 1,000 feet on a moving target and 1,600 feet on a stationary one, it can go about 3,000 feet, or pretty damn near. So, of course, the Israelis made the space in between the two areas, at least that width, times 2. 6,000 meters. Sorry, 6,000 feet. About 2,000 meters. Now let's take a look at some of the other stuff that was being used at the time and is still produced in many places, including in Palestine. You might be surprised. When was the RPG-7 introduced? Sorry.
1961.
When was the RPG-2 introduced?
According to military-today.com, However, it had several problems such as low armor penetration, inconsistent performance, and short range. A new design was started and, eventually, the original goals were accomplished in the RPG-2. Although introduced in 1949, the RPG-2 saw no widespread service until after the Korean War.
Yep. I believe it was produced from like 1952 to 1961 maybe. It was produced for just short of a decade. Range of an RPG-2.
Here is information from Wikipedia.
100 to 150 meters. Maximum firing range, 200 meters or 220 yards. All right. Range of a Hamas rocket.
According to Reuters, Hamas also owns another rocket with a much further range of approximately 150 kilometers. Map showing Israel and Gaza. Concentric red lines show approximate missile ranges from Gaza, Mortar, 10 kilometers, Qassam -4 to 16 kilometers, Grad, 20 kilometers, Grad, Advanced, 45 kilometers, and Fahar -5 to 75 kilometers, which covers Tel Aviv.
Yeah. Not sure if you noticed. Why is it the Israeli made the Iron Dome defense system? And they didn't make it for no reason whatsoever. That is for certain. Upgraded Katyusha rockets. Those are from World War II. New Iranian M302, M75, and Thar 5. Hamas rocket arsenal ranges. Go to the Qassam rocket. It's one of the shorter ones. Designer is Ad-Din Al-Qassam Bridges. Manufacturer, Palestinian militants. Produced 2001 to current. Qassam 1, 2, 3, and 4. Got their lengths, diameters, warhead weights, warhead type. It's basically any explosive material with metal ball bearings. Propellant. Sugar and potassium nitrate mix. Potassium nitrate has a lot of different uses. And believe it or not, it's a lot easier to get into a place like that than sugar. Also, people are a lot more likely to not try to hide sugar. I feel so gross. When it comes to the United Nations, we got United Nations needing to get involved in the United States here, but they won't. Hopefully they will get involved in Israel. The Israeli people should be able to feel safe in their own homes. instead of having to go kill people who are murdering their families, murdering their children, cutting the heads off of their children, slaughtering hundreds of unarmed civilians at music festivals. Killing people and raping their friends next to their friends' dead bodies. Yes, the United Nations needs to get in there and allow the Palestinian people who aren't interested in this bullshit anymore to get the hell out of there and go somewhere that's not controlled by Hamas. I would also like to urge every Israeli to pray for their enemies before praying for themselves. Pray that your enemies decide they no longer want to be your enemies. Pray they decide to be friends. And then here's the hard part. When the time comes, let them be friends. Israel has shown an infinite amount of patience with Palestine and with Hamas. They even worked with Hamas against the recommendations of Israel's allies. That's right. The United States said you probably shouldn't work together with Hamas. We do not recommend this. This is a bad idea. The British told him it was a bad idea. The Israeli government wanted to extend peace, so they didn't listen to the recommendations. The Israelis allowed the Palestinians the infrastructure to bomb Israel. And it is not against international law or against the rules of war for them to deprive their enemy of that infrastructure.